Our second reading is from Matthew, probably pages 1 or 2 in the New Testament. And it's from chapter 2, verses 1 through 12. Let's listen for what the Lord has to say to us today. In the time of King Herod, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem asking, "Where is the child who has been born King of the Jews? For we observed his star in the east and have come to pay him homage." When King Herod heard this, he was frightened, and all Jerusalem with him. And calling together all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Messiah was to be born. They told him, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for so it has been written by the prophet, 'And you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among rulers of Judah, for from you shall come a ruler who is to shepherd my people Israel.'" Then Herod secretly called the Magi and learned from them the exact time when the star had appeared. Then he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go and search diligently for the child, and when you found him, bring me word, so I may go and pay him homage." When they heard the king, they set out, and there ahead of them went the star that they had been seeing in the east until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw that the star had stopped, they were overwhelmed with joy. On entering the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother, and they knelt down and paid him homage. Then, opening their treasure chests, they offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they left for their own country by another road. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Here's a plot for a story. Mysterious foreigners, drawn by a star, travel to a country far away to bow down before a toddler and give him gifts. And now, generations later, we are drawn by the light to do the same thing, to bow down before him and give him gifts. One thing I noticed dwelling in the story this time around was about all the experts that we meet in the story. The Magi. Probably they're from Persia. They may be priests, but they are also like scientists, historians, philosophers. They know the night sky like the back of their hand, and they are well read in different cultures and religions. A few of them have seen an intriguing star. And I know that when they get together in their think tank and get all excited and talk about things that they've convinced the others, this is a special star, and we've read about this culture and this dates, and we look at the sky, and a new king has been born, and let's go find him. And so they take off. They go, not with a map, but with just enough light for one step after the other. King Herod also has lots of experts. Maybe it's a little exaggeration that he called all the priests and all the scribes. That would have to be a pretty big room, but between them, they know everything about the laws and the Torah and the prophecies and what's going to happen and when and how. And so they ask, and they say, yes, the Messiah is going to be born in Bethlehem in Judea. And he says, yeah, I knew that. I was just checking. And boy, is he an expert. He's an expert in power and strategy and keeping power and managing his emotions, which leads him to do the unthinkable, as we heard last week. So experts they all are, but it's so amazing that the heartbeat of this story is a little child. A little child and with his mother in a modest dwelling somewhere in a modest village illuminated by a star. So it's Jesus. People, it's always Jesus. I thought, what about that star? What about that star? And in the 1850s, a British man named John Henry Hopkins wrote the song, Star of Wonder, Star of Night, Star with Royal Beauty Might. Westward leading, still proceeding, guide us to the perfect light. We'll sing that in a minute. Stars are beautiful and interesting. I love stars. I love the times we've seen them in the night sky and the constellations. I was an English major at Stetson University, but I took astronomy because I read in the catalog you would go out on blankets and look at the sky with your classmates. And we did. It was glorious. We learned there are over 100 billion stars in our galaxy, the Milky Way, and billions of other celestial objects in our galaxy. And knowledge of the stars goes way, way back. It's not surprising that these men knew about the stars. It goes back way before that, way back to the Greeks and Romans. That's where we get most of our star names. And before that, many old civilizations in the world, the stars. And so since this story began circulating, people have tried to identify what was the star. Like, let's figure what was the star. And that includes, there's a lot of work on this, guys. If you look it up, there is tons of work done on this over the centuries. There's a comet, there's 2 planets, Jupiter, I think, and Venus or Mars, that were close together somewhere around the beginning of the time we're talking about. Could be a supernova. A widely circulated story written in the 8th century proposed that the star was Christ himself taking a celestial form to lead other nations to him. I really love that idea. But you know, it's okay, we will never figure out the star or exactly when Jesus was born, because for me, the star is the bright grace of God that guides us to Christ. And the Magi can represent you and me and everyone of every background that's ever been drawn or being drawn to Christ, to know him and to give him honor. So thinking about the stars that guide us to Jesus, I think is a wonderful exercise in gratitude, and you might try this in your new year as you think about your life. So here are some of my bright guiding stars. My mother's hand taking me to Sunday school. As a teenager, delivering Christmas gifts with my mother from our church to a family of 5 newly arrived immigrants. And I still remember, even though I was probably 13 years old, that the mother was very large with child of this family. And I said, wow, Christmas, this is so cool. Another star was my confirmation teacher. I can't remember his name, but he was, you know the guys that are the combination of like stern and funny? You've probably known some of them. Maybe there's some in the room, I don't know. So I left church for several years in college and law school. I've talked about that before, and the light that was bright was really other things, you know, boys, parties, stuff like that. The light, the ones I mentioned, just seemed like that star was gone. And I would, from time to time, search for faith in books and reason. And after Chuck and I got married, and when I was expecting our first child, he very patiently, as I've mentioned before, helped me look for that star again, look for faith. And we visited churches, nothing happened except frustration wherever we went, because I It didn't feel like I believed. And then the bright star appeared, kind of like for these guys in the story, of all places, at a funeral that was of a senior partner at the law firm where I worked. And somebody came by all the offices and said, "You have to go, young associates." So we did. And the person that did the funeral was a Presbyterian pastor. It was at a Southern Baptist church. And he had been a lawyer in the same law firm, but had gone to seminary from law. And as he preached the gospel, I watched the faces, and the light of Christ was just shining so brightly in the words and the faces. So not long after that, the same minister was called to lead our Presbyterian church that was 4 blocks from home. Go figure. Our church shopping ended after a couple of times, and that was the place. And the light grew brighter, as you all probably have seen it grow here, with fellowship and preaching and service and Bible study, where I want to say that books and reason, there's nothing wrong with that. I love the intellectual part of Bible study. And in God's good grace, the light of Christ grew there too, and in our family as we had our boys, in our work, and the birth and death of loved ones, and the surprising call, my own call to seminary at 50. This morning, we find ourselves, I think, in a room full of stars. If the star is the light of Christ that draws us to Christ, then we have the Word, we have the sacrament of the Lord's Supper, we have the baptismal font, and all of creation, the symbol of the cross. Jesus said, "I am the light of the world." We have the light of the Christ candle and the Advent wreath, and the lights that we always use to indicate Christ's light here in the church. And the light of the world said, "Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but we will have the light of life." And so that we can trust that this light burns hot, even when we can't see it, and will guide us even when we don't know what's guiding us. And the light of the world said to all who would listen pretty early on in his ministry, to a hill full of strangers, he said, "You are the light of the world, let your light shine before others." And the light of the world said, "Whenever you show the love and care for the least of these, you do it for me." So, is there a face that does not bear the light of Christ? Matthew writes that the Magi left by another road. This time a dream showed them the path of light, away from Herod's awful darkness. Well, you can't find an expert anywhere who will tell you what happened to these guys, if there were even 3. That comes from 3 gifts. Where they went, what they did. Stories were written later that did not make it into the Bible, even though they weren't written that much long later, that said that they became evangelists. Well, that's a good story to tell. And one story says that one of them went to India and was later baptized by St. Thomas, who went to minister in India. I like that. In the 6th century, someone gave them names. Some of you can name them. I had to look it up. I'm not going to say this right. One of them's easy: Casper, Melchior, and Balthasar. And we know this because there's a mosaic from the 6th century in northern Italy in a basilica that has the figures and the names. It's fun to think about what might have happened to the Magi, but it's not really about the Magi, is it? It's about the light that guides us, too, when we see Jesus and his little family. Ah, there they are. Maybe when these guys got there, maybe he was sitting on his mother's lap and looking up at her as babies and toddlers do with adoring eyes. And I think after they left, he was playing with the pretty jars the Magi brought with the stuff in them. So it's about God drawing us into the light so we can give our most precious gift to the child. And I don't have any frankincense, myrrh, any of that stuff, but I have what you have, and that's my whole self, my attention. Here you are in church. You could be anywhere, bringing your presence, your whole self, into the room to worship him. And then we're transformed again and again and again, and the true light sends us out into the world as light. May it be so. Amen.